Hello everyone, long time no see. Today we're going to be talking about dominant chords and chords that appear to not fit within a key if we're looking at a diatonic chord scale, but how they actually are very rooted within the key and functioning in a way that we might not see if we're not used to seeing them. Has to do with secondary dominance leading to the next chord and so on. If you see me looking around all over the place, it's because I have two monitors in front of me right now. You might notice from previous videos I have music over here, which is reversed for me, I guess. So I'll be writing on the music as we go and annotating it with function. I have some staff paper. I can switch between different files to write on it. One of the pluses of the shutdowns is that yeah, it's an advantage, I guess, is that I've had to teach remotely only for several months now, and I also do freelance visual art, so I already had a drawing monitor, and I've been able to write on the monitor and send students the files afterwards as if I'm writing on their assignment books. So I wanted to incorporate that into videos now that I have that capacity to do so. I hope it all works out okay. I guess if you're seeing this, then it did. Um, One thing is that I'm going to be taking the files, like the annotated music and stuff like that, and putting them on Patreon, and hopefully that'll be okay. Um, Anybody, I think maybe $5 or more on Patreon can have access to any of the materials. I'd like to put them up for free, but money is just so tight. I need to come up with some ways to bring in some income. For the people who have subscribed to Patreon to support past videos, even though it's been a while, I really appreciate it. Some weeks I just don't know where food money is coming from, and to be able to pop on there and grab, $10 or $15 that was there from a month has been a huge help, even though it might not seem like it. So thank you if you have supported so far. Um, and eventually, I think I might put more up on Patreon too. I need to figure out how that all works. Of course, feel free to just take notes as well. I'm not gonna, you know, block the video somehow so you can't see what I'm writing. It's just kind of like a perk, I guess, as I try to think of more stuff to put up there other than it just being, to support the channel. I would like to start making videos more regularly. Again, now that I have this set up permanently on my table and everything, there's no reason not to. This is actually in response to somebody who was asking a question on Reddit about Georgia and why some of the uh, chords seem like they don't fit into the song, relating it back to normal diatonic chord scales. So hopefully I won't have to cut around too much in the video to edit because it's already been several hours of setting this up. I'm using streaming software for the first time to actually record this, but I think everything looks like it's okay. So there's a lot of different versions of this song. That's the first thing. And if we look back to older versions of the song, none of them that I could find actually have the same chord changes as another, if you compare them. My cat's rustling around. I don't hope that's not coming through the mic too much. So looking back, for example, to the Louis Armstrong recording, which is one of the older ones I could find, the whole part with B flat minor that comes up in bar 4 of the A section, or yeah, bar 4, isn't there. I'll show you what they use, and in all the different versions, there are these little differences here and there. Um, I wanted to show you an example of what is not a good chart to learn off of for a song like this. You might recognize this one from the Real Book Volume 2, the old, 5th edition and earlier ones. This has a lot of stuff going on. I mean, just looking at it compared to the previous one, there's a lot of extra chords. There are a lot of extra chords. They can be nice to give you ideas for, analysis with substitutions, but a lot of the time, at best, they are just extra chords, and at worst, they will be chords that are wrong if you're playing with somebody who's learned these off of a recording, which most established players do. The real book is a tool, of course, but we just have to be skeptical of any chart that we find. There's a lot of resources online now to like listen to these and look for different charts if you are having a hard time hearing the harmony, if you're just starting out with developing your ear. So I will go back to this version for reference here and there to show you the differences. The one that I'm going to be using also has the lyrics, which is a very important thing that a lot of instrumentalists ignore. The lyrics are first in the song. The melody is accommodating the lyrics. When people go to listen to music, non-musicians especially, that is what they're listening to, and everything else supports it. So sometimes you can hear the way somebody plays a melody, you can hear that they don't know the lyrics because it doesn't fit, supporting those lyrics, even if somebody's not singing them. Not that that's always a bad thing necessarily either. It's nice to change things around. But I do think even if you're not going to be singing it or memorizing the lyrics, that it's important to see them, which is another reason why I chose this chart. And it also had the most accurate, even though there are some differences compared to different versions of the song. One of the other things that we see here is that the entire beginning of the song is not usually played. All of this is just the intro. And it says freely on top. Usually if somebody was singing this, this would be rubato, and the song would actually start its form, the first A section down here. So 8-bar A sections, 8-bar sections in the song, it's very standard. The form to this song is the intro, of course, but then once we get to here, the form is, let me just put it up top, AABA, our standard 32-bar form. So if you were reading a chart like this and you didn't know it maybe, or a vocalist gave it to you, and you went back to here after you got to the end, everything would get off because that's not the top of the form in this song. That would not be repeated for solos. We would be going back to the A section, which is the top of the form. That's kind of one downside of the song. They do have this double bar to kind of indicate something is happening, but it's not that clear. They just assume that you know this. So it's one thing to be careful of as well. If you count from the end in groups of 8 bars, you can kind of tell sometimes. So like this chart, another thing I like is that it's 4 bars per line, makes things very clear. So we have 4 bars here, there's an A section. If you didn't know if it was A or B, you could just mark it the previous 8 bars. This is the B section. 8 bars up here, A section. And there's our AABA form. So let's go back to the first page. We can use the other A's on the second page for most of the content of the A section. I would, however, like to talk about something in the intro because this is the point of the video, and that's the secondary dominant. So if we have a normal diatonic chord scale, we have, I'll do it in the key of the song. This is in another video, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We have 1 major 7, 2 minor 7, 3 minor 7, 4 major 7, we'll see it as minor in this song, 5 dominant 7, it's the only dominant in the key, 6 is minor 7, 7 is minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished, and 1 is back to the beginning again. And the order of a major scale, just like this, is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. This is all review. This is stuff that you've seen if you've watched previous videos. So one of the questions that came up in this post was, why is the 2 chord not always minor? Oops, trying to draw on my mouse. Up in here, G9, that 9th is just an upper extension of 7, so it's really just G7. That should be G minor 7 according to the diatonic chord scale. So that is what we call a secondary dominant. I'm going to write over the lyrics on this since we're not going to be using them. That is a secondary dominant. The dominant usually would take you from 5 to 1. And in jazz, very often we will get a 2 before that. If the 5 takes you to another chord, for example, if the 5 takes you to the 5, let me go back here to explain this. Pretend for a second that C is 1. Pretend like this is the tonal center of the song. G then is the 5 of that chord. So G7 would take us to C. just major triad. It's not in this song. But that is the 5 of the 5, and then the 5 takes you to the 1, right? I hope that makes sense. You can put a 5 in front of everything, and now if we go back a measure to the D7, this is the 6. And I'm going to write 6 dominant 7th. That does not match the 6 here. The 6 should be minor 7. It's the relative minor of the key. So why is that a dominant 7th? As soon as you see a dominant 7th chord in a American songbook kind of standard, you can start asking yourself, is this the 5 of something that's coming next? Is this a secondary dominant? There are other terms for the secondary dominant is specifically the 5 of the 5 of the original key. But in jazz, we can just think of it as the 5 of something else other than the 1. So this 6 chord, even though people describe it as the, excuse me, as like a 6 dominant 7, because we just get used to it so often, that is actually the 5 of 2. And we would write it like this. Let me put this in a different color. This is actually what we would write if it was a theory analysis, the 5 of 2. The 2 is not minor in this case, even though I'm writing it lowercase, but that's its function. And then the G7 is the 5 of 5, which is the secondary dominant. And then we have the normal 5. And that takes us to the 1. And the intro, by the way, starts up here. I just wrote it down there for some reason. Now, looking back one more measure, this might be overkill, but I want to make sure it's clear. This is the 3 chord, and this happens down in the form as well, right here. This would be written in a jazz theory analysis just as 3 dominant 7. But as soon as we see that dominant 7th, it doesn't fit because, right, 3 is a minor in the diatonic chord scale. As soon as it doesn't fit, we say, what's it the 5 of? And usually it's going to be the 5 of the thing that's coming next. And in fact, A7 would lead you to D. So that is the 5 of the 6. And we would write that in a theory analysis as 5 of 6, even though the 6 is not minor. And we have this string of secondary, well, let's just say string of dominant chords that lead you from one to the next. So we have the 1 chord, and we have the 3 chord, which is dominant, which leads you to the 6, which is also dominant, which leads you to the 2, which is also dominant, which leads you finally to the 5, which is dominant as it should be, and leads you to the 1. Now, coming up after that, we're not going to do the whole intro, but coming up after that, we see a normal 3 chord because it's minor, and a normal 6 chord because it's minor. But then we see another secondary dominant. With the G7 here. So I hope that makes sense. We're talking just about dominance, a 5 chord leading you to its own 1, not necessarily the 1 of the original key. Let's get into the actual song before this gets too long. I hope everything's working okay. I do this for lessons, but I have not recorded it before. So one thing that's kind of missing here, let me just pop this in. This should just be F at the first bar of the A section. The last chord up here was F, so they didn't write it again. So let's just break this down piece by piece. We have the 1 chord. We're in F. We've already done this. The 3, which is dominant, immediately out of the tonal center of F, as soon as we see that. A chord that does not fit the diatonic chord scale of the original key is temporarily leaving that key. And in this case, that is the 5 of 6. And in this case, the D minor is minor as it should be. I hate to use that term, like the 6 is almost more commonly dominant in jazz than minor. When we have a 3-6-2-5, the 6 is almost always dominant. So there's no should about it. We'll write that lowercase. We'll be redundant and even put the minor there. Now, G minor, that's the 2 that belongs to F, of course. And I'll play some of this later as well, I think. I'm going to leave out the minor 7s, I think, actually, too, because it's going to get pretty cluttered. So lowercase, minor, uppercase, major. I will write major 7, though, because just 7 is dominant. Now, next chord. If you have seen the minor 4 video, the minor 4 trick, or whatever we called it, it's called a plagal cadence, minor plagal cadence, then you will know what this is, the B flat minor. This is also the bar that has a lot of differences in recorded versions of the song. Some do this. I think the Willie Nelson version does this, I believe. This is not the chord that belongs here, right? The 4 should be major, as we see here. But it's minor here. The minor 4 is a resolution, just to review this because there was an entire video about it, if I remember correctly. The minor 4 chord wants to take us to 1. If I play this, just minor 4, or let's just do a triad. So B flat minor, F major, right? B flat minor, F major. That's something we hear a lot, right? It's not 5 to 1. It's not, but it's something that we definitely hear and is hopefully something that it sounds familiar. And this is called a minor plagal cadence, but I think in the past I've just called it the minor 4 trick because we see it so often in jazz. We see the minor 4 chord. If you see the minor 4 chord, especially in like bar 4, then you know it's going to 1 next, or 3. Let me just write this stuff down. We've talked about all this stuff before. 3 and 1 are interchangeable. 3 is a less committed 1 chord. They share the same notes. They function the same way. Sorry, let me rewrite this. Not that 3, the minor 3. If it's major or dominant, it's not the same as 1. Okay, so we see the minor 4. And lo and behold, we are at the 1 chord. We could have guessed that. We could have bet a lot of money on it and been correct. Now we just have a turnaround. Very often this is what happens after the minor 4. It could be 3-6-2-5. Some versions of the song instead of F would have a minor 7, which would be the 3 chord, 1-6-2-5. And we've already talked about why the 6 is dominant earlier. So I will just write it with the jazz terminology instead of 5 of 2. Just call it 6 dominant 7, 2, 5, 1. Now this is kind of an old school way to get to 2, and it's really maybe beyond the scope of the video. It is something we've talked about. There's a video on diminished chords if you look back. But if we have F, F sharp diminished, and then G minor is the 2, and then G7, sorry, C7. Let me say that all one more time. When I'm playing and talking, I'm out of practice of playing and talking, I guess. So we have 1, flat 2 diminished, 2, 5. And really the F sharp diminished, if I just put a D down there, it's just the 6 chord. It's functioning the same way as the dominant 6 chord, as a D7. So we could think it is, let me do it like this, flat 2 diminished, but really it's the sound of 6, technically with a flat 9, we may as well add that as well, just for accuracy. Okay, so that's the A section, and then 5, and the augmented and all that. All the extra information is nice. The melody note here is G sharp, which is the sharp fifth. So they're rating augmented just because it's reflected in the melody. All right, going on, second A section. I don't know how much, how much I'll be writing here because it's all the same stuff. In fact, let me write it, but just kind of blow through it. So 1, 3, dominant 7, which is the 5 of 6. That's on the previous page, so I won't write it. And then we have 2. And very commonly, I forgot to mention, the minor 4 is preceded by 2. And as soon as we see that minor 4, we know we're going to 1, 625 or 3, 625. 6 is dominant, which means it is a 5 of something, 5 of 2 in this case. C13 doesn't mean anything to us. The melody note is the 13th. It's just 5, 7, 1. And then we have this 4 that kind of comes out of here. It's not really worth dwelling too much on this, but it's another really familiar sound. If we have 1, and then let's play it as the 9th. It's just kind of a, I don't know, bluesy way to give you a plagal cadence back to 1 again. There's not, I don't want to go too long because I know this is already, I don't know how long, I don't know how to check that, but okay. Now, another big kind of giveaway here. Dominant chord out of nowhere before the B section means we're going to a new key, and it's the 5 of whatever the new key is usually. So this is the 5 of D minor, and in that case, it is the 3 dominant 7, but that doesn't really help us in this case. So rather than thinking of it like that, we are going to think of this as the 5 of 6. But again, even that doesn't matter. Like, does it really matter that D minor is the 6 when it's D minor, D minor, D minor for the entire B section? This is now heard as the minor 1 chord. So because we're thinking of the entire B section in D minor, why even call it 6? We're not going to solo over it thinking, I'm soloing over the 6th chord. We're thinking of this as D minor now. So this A7, even though it is the 3 of F, and you know, we had it earlier, like up here, that was D minor for 1 measure, and that was taking us back to F eventually, right? D minor to here, then back to F. But here, D minor is definitely being heard as the 1 chord. This is where there's a lot of different versions of the song with different changes. If we go over here, this is the B section in the real book. They have minor 1, they have 5, because it's A7. They have 1, and then they have this B diminished 7. That's because the root movement D, pretend D is the bass note, then D over C sharp as we see there, D over C, it's just descending chromatically. And yes, many versions of the song do that. But in terms of the oldest versions we can find, that's nice to play. I do like that, but we're going to take it back to the older versions of the song. And again, this is, if you're looking for it, there's a YouTube video where Louis Armstrong is, I think, recording this later than he's recording him talking about it later than he actually recorded the song, because the quality sounds better on his voice talking about it than when the music actually plays. But the recording was in the 30s, so it is one of the older ones. So minor 1, minor 4. I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly because I know this is going long already. Minor 4 fits in the key. If the 1 chord is minor, the 4 chord should be minor. And very often you'll see other versions where this is G7 instead of minor 7. That's one difference. You need to be on the same page as the people you're playing with when you play a song like this with multiple versions. D minor is 1. B flat 7 is basically, without, again, going into this too much, B flat 7 is a sound that we've kind of heard often going back to D. minor. It's the flat 6 dominant chord, and usually that would go to the 5. If I play this, right, that'd be 1, flat 6, 5, 1. So the flat 6 is usually going to be followed by the 5 in a minor key, but it isn't in this case. Flat 6. And then we're just doing the same thing. 4. Here, let me put key center. Whoops. Key center D minor. And then we see it changed where it goes to, this is the one case which is kind of cool in this song. Some versions do it, most versions do it because of the melody note, where the chord is not minor here, it's dominant, and it's not leading you to its 1 chord. C would be the next chord if it did. So this one is kind of the oddball. We'll just leave that for now. If we were to analyze a blues where every chord is a dominant 7, none of this would work in the same way. The 1 chord is a dominant 7 in most blues, and it's not functioning like a dominant chord. It's just the sound, it's that blues sound. So sometimes we will get that happening where there just isn't you could come up with some sort of theoretical explanation, but again, this, well, I haven't said it yet this video. If you're new, this is all meant to be practical and applying to your playing, not just talking about theory for theory's sake, even though I do like talking about theory. Okay, so we had 1, 4, same thing, 1 for a D minor, and then we have a dominant chord that is not expected. So guess where it's going? Now, this will be useful to think of as functional harmony here. Let me erase some of this. So this 5-7 is taking us to A minor. E7 to A minor is just, it makes sense. E7 is the 5 of A minor, but A minor is the 3 of F. So what we're actually getting here, and very, very common at the end of a B section of a song, is a turnaround back to the 1, because we need to get back to our original key. So 3, 6, dominant 6, right? Dominant 2, which are all dominants leading to the next chord in the song, and then 5, which actually takes us back to 1. Let me erase my arrow. There's our 1. And there's no differences here going to the end from what we see through all of this up here. So I won't rewrite that. Okay, so that was a process. I feel like that took forever, but I don't know how to check my recording time yet with the software, so I guess I'll find out later what it is. I hope this all makes sense. This is a beautiful song. I hope you all play it and, at the very least, go through the harmony. If we think about harmonizing this too, it has some really nice opportunities for inversions. If you look back to the inversion video connected with diminished chords, even though there's not a lot of diminished chords, I don't know if I can talk while I'm doing this, but the A7, that's just one A section, but it's a very, very beautiful song. Okay, let's wrap it up then. If you got to this point in the video, I hope this was helpful. I will pop these files on Patreon, possibly not till the end of the weekend because I haven't done this before, so I'm not exactly sure. I'm also on a very low speed internet right now because people who can't pay their bills are being capped at very, very low speeds. So I hope I can update this or upload this. Might take overnight, but we'll see. And I hope this all works. If you have any questions, let me know. I think the other thing I might do with Patreon as well is, anybody feel free to comment with questions and video ideas. But I think one thing I should do on Patreon is any Patreon subscriber to give them just like a free pass for a video idea. If you want something almost like as if it was a correspondence lesson, then I will record a video on it. And that, of course, I doubt I'll get this many people, but if it got over a certain point, then that would be just not possible to make that many videos. But honestly, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So, okay, I don't think we missed anything here. And now, just to go back before we stop, look at this. What a mess. And it can be a really nice learning tool. But if you roll up to a jam session or something and say, let's play Georgia, and these are the changes some of them will work. Playing the E half diminished here is just the two of A. So if D minor is our target, then E is just the two, and then the A, which is 5. Both of them lead you to D minor 7. So that's not a huge deal, even though it's not an original chord to put the E half diminished there. But some things, oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. I have to mention this. In the older versions of the song, this measure, this G over B, by the way, sounds great. Not something that we see in the older versions of the song. Let me go back over to here for a second and just use a completely different color. What should I do? Maybe green. So in this one, it's this. Actually, wait. Let me do this on the second page because I didn't write on this measure. This is the same measure that I was just pointing out on the previous page. It's here. It is here. So in the original, just to give you what I was hearing from a lot of these older recordings, we have F major, very often just a major triad, not a major 7. Not a huge deal, if you want to add something different. A7, D minor, and then it will go to the minor 4 right away. So after the D minor chord, it won't go to G minor, it'll go right to B minor, B flat minor, sorry, and then to B diminished, and then to C over F. Sorry. So if I play that in sequence, we would have F, A7, D minor, and then it goes right to B minor, B flat minor, and then B flat diminished. I can't talk and play apparently. B flat minor, B diminished, and then to F over C. So we have this root movement. And then it continues on from there normally. So let me just write that in. You have to kind of expect this if you're playing the song with somebody, because if it's an older musician or somebody who is not learning these from a book, they are going to possibly be doing this. So the B flat, and this would be for every A section as well. The B flat minor would replace the G minor 7, and then we would have B diminished 7, and that leads us up chromatically to F with C in the bass. So just wanted to mention that. I hope, well, I guess the people who stayed till the end got that extra piece of information. I should have mentioned it earlier though. Okay, so I'll have some sort of upload schedule. I'll put this up on Patreon. Patreons will be in the description. It's just my name. And if you want lessons or anything like that, you can hit me up at paulhofrader@gmail.com. Just copy the spelling from my channel name. All right, I hope this video came out. I will see you all soon. Hope you're all doing well, staying safe during these unusual times. Take it easy as I find the stop button.